Let's go for it! I like the dark stuff. Give me the dark stuff. I like the dark stuff. Give me the dark stuff.
Hey everybody, it's me, your buddy Dave, the host of the Dark Stuff channel here on YouTube. Thanks a lot for checking out my newest video. Today's video is a really great one. I interview Adam Elk, who is the lead singer, guitar player, and primary songwriter in the band The Mommyheads. Now in the 90s, this band rose up the indie ranks all the way up to major labeldom and signed on with Geffen Records. That situation didn't exactly work out the way that the band had wanted. In my interview with Adam, he talks about the band's rise up to that point, his very, very brief solo career, and then what he's been up to prior to the band's recent reunion. They've released 3 albums in the last 3 years, and you would think that for a band of guys in their 50s that this wouldn't be their most prolific period, yet it seems to be that way. So I hope you'll like this interview because it really does tell you a cool story about the 90s, about the quote-unquote old days of the music industry. But this is the way it was in my scene back when I had my record label, and this is the sort of the glory days as I kind of see it. And it's an interesting story in the fact that just because you get to that upper echelon or that major label system, it doesn't mean that you're automatically like a huge fucking rock star.
You know, we would do tours off a single because it was so hard to it was like so hard to record anything, to find a studio that did a good job, that paid attention, that didn't just take the money and put someone else that you never met on the board to
Right.
man the, you know, and so we would make a single and then tour on it. And it was a reason. We just needed a reason. And that was the reason. And we would book our own tours. And ironically, our own booking of our own tours was better than when we made it to Geffen and when we had a real booking agent. There was just more love in the routing. Like bad routing could break a band up easily. So ironically, we had that for years. And it prepped us to manage our expectations and in a very sort of organic way. And we just would play these shows either with 100 people, 200 people, or 5 people. And it went on and on and on. And we would play, 100 shows a year, 60 to 100 shows a year. And we really didn't, at some point, we didn't care anymore how many people were in the audience. If there were some friends and we could have a barbecue later afterwards, we were fine.
Yeah.
And if we could have breakfast at the local Greasy Spoon in the morning. And that became that in the music. And ironically, when I see bands that had success try to do it now, it's all downhill kind of, like you have to manage expectations. And if you had a hit and you had any sort of money thrown at you, it's hard to get the guys back in a room unless there's money. And
Right.
what we're doing now is just self-sustaining. Like we sell enough off the internet, CD Baby, to just make the next record, make the artwork, do the mastering, and fly us to Sweden and the base amount that we do. So it's a self-sustaining thing and we're fine with it. And so the fact that we had all those years of literally touring off a single,
Yeah.
it really helped us survive for 30 years. That really...
Well, let me ask you,
That's
you mentioned Sweden. That was one of my questions. How did you guys get, I was looking on YouTube. I found all these videos of you guys in Sweden on Swedish TV. What's the
Amazing.
deal? What's the deal with you guys in Sweden?
Well, back in the day, you had to make physical product, right? We all know that. Pre-Facebook, we were around before all that. And
Sure.
to get product out of the U.S. was really hard. And even to get it in the U.S. was hard. You had a record label. And so just to get it anywhere was, a struggle. And you would sell more off the stage or the back of the van. And so when the Geffen record came out, they put it into the system. And what that meant was it cost a lot of money just to put it into this infrastructure, whether it was WIA or Interpublic, whatever was happening. And what that means is it would go to Indonesia, it would go to South Korea, it would go to Scandinavia, it would go to, it would go to the whole world, and it would get on a rack at Tower Records, wherever the record shops were. And when they decided to pull the plug, I know I'm jumping the gun a little.
Right.
The plug was not pulled in all these areas. They were sort of manned by their own people. And so Scandinavia, I guess we realized later, we're kind of a Northern European vibe. And that Scandinavia took to us, and they didn't even realize we had broken up for 10 years, kept calling us and calling us and calling us. And the reason we got back together was A, our original drummer passed away. We had a reunion show, and B was that there was all this love in some other place that was gorgeous. You know, who doesn't want to go there and play? Yeah. And we showed up. They had made their own greatest hits record. They made T-shirts. They had a record label ready. They had a car, a press thing, and then a couple hundred people at a show. And we thought, this is cool. This is a retirement gig now.
So you mentioned. I'm going to get to the breakup first, but you did mention getting back in 2008. Now, was everyone in the band that was in the band in 98 when you broke up back in 2008? Was it the same 4 guys?
Well, here's an example of success having a slight rub. It was the same band. It was the main band the Mommyheads had. Jeff Palmer was the bass player, and the thing for him is he went on to play with Sunny Day Real Estate. 2 of those guys got pillaged for the Foo Fighters, the bass player Nate and the drummer. And Jeremy Enoch and the guitar player, we were friends. You know, we used to tour with those guys. And so they needed a new bass player. They used a guy named Joe Bass, who was in the Posies, and then he disappeared. And so Jeff said, sure, I'll do it. And then he was on a tour bus and had a nice run with them. And then by the time we got back together, it was kind of sleeping at friends' houses in Scandinavia. They're all friendly and awesome, but it wasn't, so I think it didn't work for him. But that first tour, we had the original band, and then since then we had a guy named Jason McNair who's from the Bay Area, who's awesome and a great vibe, and we all really get along, and that's the whole thing. If you can't get along, why are you doing this? I mean, the whole thing needs to feel like a Labor Day barbecue, like every gig. If it doesn't feel like that, it's not worth it.
Okay, so a little bit going backwards a little bit. So you guys run a number of labels, building it up. And I remember Bingham's Hole getting a fair amount of attention in the press and everything. Reading, back when people used to read music magazines and stuff like that.
Option,
yeah, like Option or Magnet or something like that.
Oh, Magnet, yeah, sure.
Yeah. So you eventually get it up to the major label system. Obviously, it didn't necessarily work out the way that you had wanted it, but how did that come about? Was it Don Was that brought you in? Was it someone that worked at Geffen? What was the story on that? How did you hook up with them?
By the time we were on Bingham's Hole, and we were also on Simple Machines, and that was awesome. That was like Discord level coolness,
Yeah.
So we had some really great people. Jenny Toomey with Simple Machines, Peter Cadis, who went on to win a Grammy and did Interpol and produced Sting, and the National he was basically the label for Bingham's Hole. So we had all these wonderful people fueling the tank for us while we suffered through those years of playing in front of X amount of people. And the real key was we had played with so many different bands, and one of the bands that we used to love playing with was Southern Culture and the Skids. Okay. They got signed to Geffen, and their A&R guy was looking for bands, and the drummer, God bless him, said, this band, the Mommyheads, are cool. And ironically, at the same time, Lisa Loeb asked us to tour with her right after her big hit. So she was playing like almost amphitheaters. And we just toured with her in 96. So we were ironically on tour with Lisa Loeb on it was like their premier artist at the time, because the same A&R guy couldn't get Guns N' Roses back together. Weezer was in between records, Whiskey Town wasn't charting yet, so Lisa Loeb was the big act, and we were opening, and Southern Culture's drummer said, check him out. So he flew out to St. Louis and Kansas City and saw the 2 shows, and we were just rocking. It was like 7 years of touring. We just were unstoppable, and he knew it, and so he signed us on the spot, and it was cool. I mean, it was a nice touch of the end of that era of A&R people, right? And labels just signing everybody, and so that was fun. The way it ended up was, so Don Was produced it because our manager had Don. Don was just a gentleman, and we thought he can help us get through this, navigating this humongous industry. Just we're going to suffer. So he was just the big. He was our uncle, Okay. And then we got Jim Scott. What a great engineer. He was in between Tom Petty, Wildflowers, and Rolling Stones records, and just phenomenal. And he blew us away. We went to Ocean Way where Pet Sounds was recorded, the same room. and he bypassed everything and brought his own gear in. And I thought, that's incredible, you know. And so we got a taste of the whole LA thing. It was all right, you know. It's a little, there's a sadness to every success in LA. And John Bryan played on it. We used to go to the Largo every Friday and jam with him, and Ben Montench would show up. It was star-studded, you know, like, why would you not want to experience that once in your life, you know? But so, yeah, and then it came crashing down.
Right. Well, so you
Jaded, I'm not jaded, I'm just sleeping with my eyes open.
made the record, and I want to see if the story that I had heard is correct. So the record is made. It's fantastic, by the way. It's one of my favorite records of the 90s. It comes out now. Either the way I heard the story was that there was a whole bunch of, you know, corporate shuffling and whatnot, and before the record was even released, they had decided the Mommyheads are a band being dropped.
You know, we didn't make a record that we should have made, which should have been cooler. We just made the record we knew how to make, which was a pure pop, which is 4 guys in a room, and songwriting is key, and just best performance. And what was happening was Beck, which was great, you know, and Radiohead came out on the same Tuesday we came out, which was not a good thing. You know, OK Computer was stiff competition. And what was happening was that classic pop record, it was the worst timing. And if anything, we kind of ruined it for 3 years for a lot of bands in our league. You know, it was like they took the boat out and sunk it. You may want to wait until 2001, Death Cab for Cutie. You know, whoever you are out there, singing it. If you're intellectual lyrics and it's soft, a little bit soft, wait. And so we kind of, it was really bad timing. And so they would have shakeups literally every week. Like you didn't know who was coming or going, who your A&R guy really was, who the marketing guy was, the press people would. It was so fractured and mutable that it just kept changing. So it really made us insecure. And ironically, you know, we had this 2 A&R guys. One had Peter Gabriel, which we love. You know, we love Genesis, and the other guy was trying to get Guns N' Roses back together and had Weezer. And where did we fit in? You know,
right?
So it's trying to push a big boulder up a hill, and we realized that. And we also realized we can't do this again. You know, if we ever do this again, it's got to be on our terms. It's got to be smaller and more organic.
So you guys did break up at that point or shortly thereafter. Was there any thoughts you were just going to call it quits right then, or was there any attempt to sort of keep it going for a bit, see what, maybe something else, maybe someone will pick us up or whatever? I mean, or was it just, no, we're done at this point?
I think it was, you know, back then they'd give you $500,000 for a record, and we were doing them for $1,000.
Okay.
So the shock of getting all that money and then being dropped, it was our delicate psyches were, you know, the psyche of the band was fractured. And I thought I'd love to get back with these guys, but just now is it's just not right.
Right.
And we were told, you know, keep doing it. You know, Weezer had issues with Geffen and they kept doing it. And the lucky band stayed together. And I'm just lucky that we got back together.
Oh, absolutely.
And we have the ability just to do it for fun now. And you hear it in the music. It feels fun. And I look at all the records now that feel fun to me, where bands get back together, whatever, and I could hear it, and it's enjoyable. And it's not this 25-year-old guy who feels all the weight of the world on their shoulder. It's joyous, and maybe it's good the way it all turned out, you know?
Well, you never know. I mean, the same thing, like you said, happened to a lot of bands. Spoon went through the same thing, you know? They signed to Elektra. They had one record out. The label had a new CEO and was like, adios to Spoon, and they were cut. The record was out just a couple weeks. So it's happened before, and they took it out on their A&R guy. You know, they wrote
Ron Lafitte.
Ron Lafitte. The feet don't fail me now.
Fail me now. No, so they were lucky. They stuck it out. I love those guys.
Yeah. So when the band breaks up, 98-ish or so, is that the time when you decided to start going by Adam Elk as opposed to Adam Cohen? Because here's the solo record right here.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Yeah. So is that, and what triggered the change? I mean, just new identity or something?
Yeah, I made demos. I gave them to a friend. She gave them to this A&R woman who was at Artist Direct. And Artist Direct had to deal with RCA. I don't know if you remember them, but they were the biggest booking agency around, aside from William Morris. And their big concept in '99 was full 360 store, online store, booking, and label. So they would cover Tom Petty, they would cover REM, they had everything. And so brilliant idea. And I was one of their artists, and I thought this is cool. And they were going to put my record out, and they had a Tuesday picked, about 5 months ahead of it. And they realized that Adam Cohen, Leonard Cohen's son, was on Columbia same Tuesday. So they were like, we can't put Adam Cohen's into the universe on the same Tuesday. So my manager asked me, well, what do we do? Do you have another name? And how about your mom's side? And that's Elk. So I went with my mom's side of the family and realized there's no Adam Elks out there. There's no .com,
No.
.net. So the decision was made at Artist Direct.
Kind of made for you a little bit.
Made for me, So I'm fine with it. It doesn't matter. And then so before the record came out, they went public because it was such a big concept. And they started out and then also that same week, Napster had a billboard on Sunset Boulevard saying, "Why pay for music?" or something like that. So we're driving by this sign. Artist Direct opens at $3, $13 a share, and ends up at 25 cents at the end of the day. And RCA pulls out, and it was just a scramble, and all bets are off. And I'm like, okay, I see where this is heading. And that was, to me, literally the moment where music was going to become free, art was going to be free, labels are going to be gone, booking agents are going to be more powerful because that's an income stream, and the rest is history. And I just decided, I got into jingles. So
that's what you started doing right after your solo.
Yeah, 2000 to 2008, and I'm still doing it, but now I'm definitely more focused on the Mommyhead stuff. So
now, is this was the first reunion record? Yes or no? Songs that did make it to the Geffen record, as well as some other original demo takes, and that we just got back together, and that was 2008, and Jan had passed away, and that was right after that show. So yeah. Okay. So that was the first thing. You're Not a Dream. Okay. So you guys did a couple of records when you got back. There's a compilation, The Finest Specimens. Yeah. There's a couple other things. And it seems like, okay, you're doing some touring in Europe, and then you sort of disappeared for a couple more years, and then you came back, and you've been more prolific now, it seems, than at any time in your career. So how come you're now, 25 years after, your supposed major label peak or whatever, now you're busier and doing more than you ever have in the entire history of the band?
It's all a question mark on one side, and all makes sense to me on another side. The question mark is things happen when they happen. We put out 3 records, and then I'm sort of monofocused. So I'm a pit bull. Once I get into something, I don't look away. And so those 3 records came out, and then I had to start a new business, and I did the 5-year plan, and I said to the guys, I need 5 years of complete focus. And literally the minute the 5 years was up, I'm like, I'm ready. And the business is floating along, and we have, all our things in place. And they said, cool. And at that moment, I realized, I personally think that a mid 45-year-old to 50, now I'm 50-year-old guy is just as valuable and can say just as much and mean just as much in his community, whatever that is. And ours is music and radio for you. We could have just as much value as a 25-year-old. And it could almost be deeper in some regards. You could actually say deeper things in your lyrics and maybe go deeper places musically and be just as valid. And that's what I wanted to do when we came back. And that entails a lot, which is let's make a record every year. And every year, let's reflect on the year before. So if one year is about feeling isolated, like this one, let's write songs about isolation. And if you have anger, let's be angry about the political climate, or let's talk about who's in our lives and who we're in love with. And let's not rehash old things. Let's not play the old songs too much. Let's be in the moment. And it's just being, a middle-aged guy and having something to say. And that's the trajectory that I want us to be on.
Now, what would you say is the difference between Mommyhead's original run and Mommyheads now? Like, for example, what I see as a difference musically, there's a certain amount of consistency, and that's good. And there's always little new elements added in every now and again. But I think lyrically, in the first run, lyrics were more on the personal side, and now there is the element of politics and things in the new, especially in the new record. So, is that just come from, being older? It's your new perspective or whatever, or was that something back in the day? You just, I don't want to get involved in political music. I don't want to do that sort of stuff. And so you focus more on the personal politics, really.
Yeah, I think when you're in your 20s, there are a lot of 20-year-olds that are very political now more than ever, I think. We just weren't a very political band. I think the big difference as a band was we were a live band.
Yeah.
And recordings were rare. I mean, they were as rare as hen's teeth. And when we actually got in and recorded and had luck, it was like, oh my God, it was incredible. And now we're more of a recording band that just happens to play a surprise show here and there. So that's a huge difference to me. And now that there's a pandemic, we're more of a recording band than ever. We have no choice.
Yeah.
Which is actually works great. Like, we're having a decent pandemic.
Oh yeah.
It's
Are the four of you all now? You relocated out of San Francisco, right? You're in New York.
New York, yeah.
New York. And do all four of you live in New York now?
We're spread out, Massachusetts and New York. So
okay, so not too
Michael's on the Cape Cod. And, so we can get together, and we just got together recently. One had actually survived COVID-19 and made it out alive, our bass player.
Oh my gosh.
So he has antibodies, so he was fine. And the drummer and I decided we're in our basements. Let's just take our masks off, and we jammed. And our keyboard player was on the laptop. It was weird, but we just went over some new songs, and we're like, "This is the new thing," This is
well. And you guys were doing it 10 years ago. I saw that TV commercial that you were in 10 years ago, where you guys were doing the like playing all on the internet and whatever. And it was like, yeah, nobody thought that was anything anyone would do, and now. Every day there's something new on YouTube of musicians getting together and all playing from their apartments or what have you. So,
dude, I get a couple of emails here and there that first was that where everyone laughed at us playing in our four squares on the Time Warner Cable commercial, and now it's a reality. And then we made a record cover where my daughter is in a gas mask, and everyone was like, "Why would you ever put a kid in a gas mask?" And 2 years later, everyone's in masks basically. So
and the soundtrack to The World's End, so that was the name of the record already. So you guys were like a couple years ahead on that one.
We're always a little off time wise, but that one commercial was way ahead, and actually it never worked. It was all kind of a lie. The latency was so intense. They got hate mail and hate comments.
Now, did you guys do that because your connections with jingles and commercials and all that, or was it some other? Yeah.
We have a producer who's wonderful, Carl Westman at Ogilvy, and he knew that we were dads at the time, and the casting director wanted guys who couldn't leave the house because they had kids jamming from far away.
Okay.
So that was the idea, and we looked the parts, and we could play.
No, it's just so funny. I didn't see the commercial until honestly a few days ago. It's on your YouTube page. So I saw it. I was just like, wow, this is like everybody's doing this now. And this commercial was 10 years ago. So I just thought that was hilarious.
It's like 09.
Right. So the newest record right now is New Kings of Pop here. And it has, this is the sticker from the radio. So that's why can't see the full art. It has like a Soviet Union like type of art vibe or something. What's the story with that?
I just love Soviet Union communist art, Chinese communist art, where they're trying to convince you so desperately that communism works. Kids with flags, and everyone's facing a direction, united. And I just felt like being in a band these days, or any days, you have to be a united front. You're a little gang, And I had a concept for it that never really materialized, but part of it was, like the song New Kings of Pop is about a guy in a minivan who has the ability to do great stuff, art, whatever it is. It could be any kind of artist. But he's in a minivan with a sippy cup, and he's got to put his life on hold. And that was the idea of New Kings of Pop. Like, here's your next Michael Jackson. Here's your next Prince with a sippy cup. He gave it up. And here's the alternate universe where this band is united. And the only way to do this is to have to be mentally united and on a front, and everybody goes by the same motif. And that's the only way you're going to make it. And that's sort of the general concept.
Right.
So.
The new king of pop. Delusions are the only way.
It's kind of abstract.
Yeah, but whatever. I mean, I have all of these, the last 3 records that you put out, the Soundtrack to the World's End, The Future You, and then this new one. And I do like the newest one the best of those 3, of the current 3.
Cool.
In my opinion, I just think everything sort of gels, and it has that perfect mix of, I mean, in my opinion, the same way that the self-titled one did, where it took your different elements, pushed them together, and it worked, fully. And then there's always little different things. For example, I thought of the song "Ugly Things," which reminded me of another song on the self-titled. I can't remember which one at the moment, but how it's like this song for 3.5 minutes, a normal pop song. Then it goes into this epic sort of jam thing. It reminded me a little bit of Pink Floyd to a certain degree.
Oh yeah.
And so I was like, that reminded me of a different song that from before, where you guys had that ability to sort of turn off the pop and get into something a little bit more epic sounding, as well. And I like when that element is there, and it is there on the new record. I'd mentioned that I thought there was some political stuff, and you acknowledged that. Now, you name a song after the climate activist, that Greta Thunberg.
Yes.
Now, what was the idea behind that? I mean, obviously she's become famous to a certain degree, was attacked in the United States, because people here are really stupid. And, but she is, actually naming somebody who is very involved in the environmental thing. So what was the idea behind that, I guess?
Well, that's Michael's song. But,
okay.
Yeah, but we go to, we've been to Scandinavia 6 or 7 times. So when we get there, one of the joys is talking face to face with people, not having a Facebook argument or a one-sided Twitter argument, but actually speaking to them and going, how is it with refugees here? How is it with climate change? How do you like Greta Thunberg? She's it's actually Thunberg, but
sorry.
it's totally different. And so Michael was really inspired by the fact that this one girl who sat, it kind of pulled at the heartstrings of all the parents around the world. Like, she was taking time off from school and sitting in front of their parliament until there was change. And that one person, a kid, could have such an effect on humanity. And that should inspire everyone who has an inkling of wanting to help, that your voice does matter. A lot of times we say stuff as sort of a talking point. Yeah, your voice matters, your vote matters. And we get tired of hearing stuff like that. Like, all right, I'll vote. But when you actually see it actually matters, it is really inspiring. And so he wrote that song literally overwhelmed with gratitude at just that situation, and her sort of maybe being young and stubborn and not being jaded yet. And that is only works for her, that she's not jaded, and that she could actually stick it out when everybody's attacking her. And she has this sort of, maybe that naive approach and that sort of youthful approach is exactly what we need in this day and age of old people basically waving their canes at each other, and I think the song is overdue. I think, and especially for Sweden, and what better person to have in the world representing you on so many levels than a kid? Yeah. It's amazing, No,
it's great to see her as some sort of a little bit of a pop culture icon to some degree. I mean, it's very impressive, and with all of the insanity going on in the United States, especially, but it's around the world, of course. You need to see somebody that you can just purely sort of look up to. There's no, but she's great, but there's this other side. There isn't another side with her, I don't think.
She does not come off duplicitous. ulterior motives. She's not backed by corporations. She hasn't had skeletons in the closet for years and years. She hasn't switched party lines. Like,
Right.
she's just young enough to be speaking the truth the way she calls it. And it's like, you know, we gave the world Shirley Temple, and Sweden gave us her. And you know,
Hey, don't
maybe
forget
we'll have it.
Macaulay Culkin, though. We gave the world Macaulay Culkin as well.
And Aaron Carter and all, you know, it's like, right? So, I mean, why not write a song about her? Or at least what she represents.
Yeah.
Which is a pure approach. And we're really proud of that song, and it goes over great over there. It really
Now,
does.
do you find that most of your, I mean, you haven't been on tour and haven't been able to play this new material or see it, and nobody could see you doing it because of the fact that everybody has to stay at home. But have you heard anything? Do you assume most of your fans are sort of like-minded in that way? Or have you encountered anybody who's like, you know what, why don't you just shut up and sing and, you know, do your music, stop putting politics in this? I mean, I don't know if that has happened to you at all. No,
we don't. Look, we've given up trying to convert, you know, the Denny's crowd a long time ago. You know what I mean? Like, we know exactly who our fans are. They're educated, they're music savvy. You know, our Facebook likes or whatever the tally. I'm not actually on Facebook, but we have like 1,500 people that will look at what we put out, and then there's a number that actually buy the record, and it never fails. Like, if I get an email, direct email for a CD, it's generally a musician, or it's generally someone who takes music really seriously. And I would much prefer that. I would much prefer the person who sits down with a drink and listens to a record front to back, an LP, with the lights dim, and pays attention and opens the sleeve, than someone who's just came to a bar looking to pick up someone and just liked one of the songs, or heard it on the radio and equates us to something that is not really true.
That you're not,
you know?
Yeah.
So I much prefer this, and I don't even see it as small, but just the segment that we've carved out, and it works for me. And we don't need much more. And as long as that's there, that's our soundboard. And if they're digging a full album like you did, or certain songs off an album, and they feel certain songs are not for them, at least we're staying in touch.
Right.
You know? Right.
Now, are you guys, is there any talk of doing like a little mini tour in the States when touring is a possibility, maybe next year or something like that? Or is it like, you know, Europe's the audience, we got some fans in the States, but we're going to sort of focus more on Sweden and that sort of thing, and not, you know, because I know Grant Hart from Husker Du, I used to interview him a bunch of times, and he barely played in the States. You know, his entire audience was in Europe. He'd have to play in, you know, Lawrence, Kansas on a Tuesday with 18 people. He goes to Europe and the places are packed. So I understand that concept of like, you know what, the audience just isn't there. But is there an audience in the States? I mean, that you could do any sort of, because I haven't seen you guys since probably 1994, 95. So, I, of course, would love the opportunity.
Oh, my God. We would love to come out to the Midwest. I think if we did it, it'd have to be a package thing. 2 other bands. We'd have to work something out. And, we have played San Francisco. We have played Seattle, Portland. We did it 10 years ago. We do some Northeast stuff. It's a big country. And we did kind of burn out playing the States. We love playing the States. But the thing about Europe is, you get there and you're sort of sequestered in this beautiful area. You are exotic. Admit it or not, you are this American, and everybody has an American thing, they love the bands from America. They have a big star crush, or they have, they love Buffalo Springfield, whatever. They immediately equate you to that. So you have a little edge, and everything's close. So it's like Copenhagen to Malmö is an hour. Malmö to Gothenburg's 3 hours. Gothenburg to Oslo is 1 hour. And for guys at our age, doing a 1 hour, 2 hour drive from one gorgeous city to the next, it's hard to beat.
Yeah.
Whereas going from Omaha to Chicago,
that's an entire day. That's an entire day.
So, right. Well, we'd love to come out. I mean, if we could find like-minded bands and put a package deal together, it would be great. And we do discuss it often. Play in Pittsburgh, Chicago, Ann Arbor, Richmond, all these places where there are radio stations. with guys like you that are just awesome, and they're lifers, you know. And we
Yeah.
could go and have a radio station in Paris with a club and so forth and so on. It's just getting the whole thing worked out, and it would probably be a couple of years from now. But
Yeah.
we're not against it, and we're not
Right,
on
right,
a high
right.
horse. You know, we would love to
Yeah.
do it.
No, it's difficult. And you know, in the old days when you were based in San Francisco, it's a long way from San Francisco to like Boston. You know
Oh
what I
my
mean?
God.
Like I always sort of thought bands should move to Omaha and base themselves there because it's right in the middle. You want to go anywhere, you're right in the middle of the country. So it's less distance wherever you're going. I sort of thought I had this idea of making, you know, circles for touring and just having them gradually get bigger and bigger and bigger. And eventually you're doing the whole country. But that's very difficult. You
Do
know?
you remember the Acorns? Alex McManus, who was in Lamb Chop. He's from Omaha.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't know he was from Omaha. No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's either from Lincoln or Omaha. We used to have this conversation all the time. He's like, you should just move here. And I remember being jealous of the Lips because they were in Oklahoma City, which was smack dab in the middle. And they used to just, you know, an hour to Dallas, 2 hours, you know. That was the ultimate place, if you ask me, in cheap real estate.
Yeah.
The Lips had it right.
So let me ask you, beyond the new records, you've also been reissuing some older stuff. And I know that the Bingham's Hole has come out again with a remix remaster, and then
Correct.
the self-titled is out with a bonus track. Now, what's the deal with this bonus track?
It was one track that we didn't put on. We were huge fans of Amy Mann. She had just had issues with Geffen. She wasn't selling well, and it was just like, keep doing this, don't stop, you know. And that was our little love letter to her.
Okay.
And that whole scene, John Bryan and Michael Penn, it was a really strong scene. But it did make it on the record. We also shared an A&R guy with her, so we got cold feet because we knew she was going to hear it.
Right.
So we were like, well, what if the song sucks? You know. So we kept it off, and then what happened with that record is it didn't exist anywhere, and the record started going for $80 on eBay, and it was like, we have the master. And then I remember them saying you could have your record back. Then we tried to get it in the system last year, and it got kicked back, and they sent a letter going, actually, no, we changed our mind. So now we have it on our Bandcamp, and we made records just for radio, and whoever wants to buy it, because I feel like Jaded needs to be somewhere in the record collection of radio programmers.
Yeah.
You know, it just needs to be there. And Bingham's Hole, we remixed it. I remember Petus did a great job tracking, but he was compromised a little in the mixing process. And so we remixed and remastered it, and it sounds really, really good. And Fred Kevorkian remastered it, and I wanted that record to just be in the hands of radio people and press. And also, we're coming into Beauty. We're remastering that, and we're gonna put that out next year and just have it out.
Yeah.
Because
now, when did you add the bonus tracks to Flying Suit? Because my CD has like 6 or 7 songs.
Oh yeah.
And now it's longer now. If you look at it online, it's got extra songs. When did that happen?
That was maybe 10 years ago. Dromedary. We had songs that should have been on it that just didn't make it. Like we had a tour and we just didn't have time.
Didn't finish. Yeah.
But the tracks are seamless. Like they just really work. And that has some of my favorite songs on it. Spiders, and Worm. I just love those songs. So
No, it's my favorite overall, but that is colored by the fact that was the first one I heard. And I think a lot of times when you're getting into a band, that first album you hear that turns you on to them is always going to be your favorite.
Totally.
And the one you compare everything else to, you know, whether that's fair or not. You know, when I first heard Bingham's Hole, I'm like, this isn't Flying Suit. Like, this isn't like that, you know?
Yeah.
So it was a different reaction. I'm like, okay, well, I guess they don't have to do the same thing over and over. Why should they? Right. So that's always
I don't know. I wish some bands would do the same thing over. Like Odyssey and Oracle, please make a second one. Right.
Right.
You know,
So when the band, where do you record your records now? In this studio that you're sitting in, or how is that done? Like the last 3 records that are not, these don't sound like home demos on a 4-track. I mean, it sounds like a fully produced record.
So I have a studio. I've been doing music for 30 years, and you know, I'm just very lucky. And so the commercial side paid for all the debts I had from that whole debacle with RCA and Geffen. So we had debts. You know, when you want to stay on the road and they pulled the money. And so the commercial music side afforded me to make a studio in Midtown Manhattan. That's wonderful. And most studios are closing. All these wonderful studios, you know, where Led Zeppelin recorded, and they're gone. The real estate was too much, so they became condos. There's still Sears Sound, but they might close, and we'll see if there's one studio left standing in Midtown Manhattan. But the jingle houses are vibrant and still get cash flow from agencies. So I have a studio on 45th and 6th, and on the weekends we get together. The mics are set up, the drums are set up, all the vintage gear is there. And now with the pandemic, I have all my stuff at home. And I just came into an estate sale with all these vintage synths from the 70s. They're all analog, and I want the next record to be all synths. So that's my thing I'm working on right now. Nice.
Interesting. So that's what we can look forward to. Breaking news on this interview is the next Mommyheads record will be using all vintage synths. Their Kraftwerk sort of experiment, you know, that letting that
element. Totally. It's going to sound like Are We Not Men, somewhere between that, the Cars' first record, Kraftwerk, and XTC still, because everything has got to be an offshoot of XTC somehow.
XTC, right, because that's always the band they compare you to in every sort of review. Or XTC meets The Band or something like that when it was kind of that Bingham's Whole sound.
Which is the most insane mix ever.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. But it has always worked for me, you know. I like that kind of quirky pop, which is still an element to your sound. I like the streamlined, quote unquote, streamlined version of it on the self-titled record. And, you know, I didn't think it lost anything from the previous records. You know, it was just like, this sounds amazing. And, you know, I never knew much about Don Was. I just, the name, I know he worked with Paul Westerberg after that, and they had a really good experience, but the record tanked as well. Like and Paul was dropped shortly after that also.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah, it's just unbelievable the way the industry used to work. And then I was interviewing a band one time and recently, and I said something to the effect of like, you know, because she was saying she got a check from Spotify for like $2 or something, you know, for so many spins. And I was just like, yeah, like as corrupt as the old industry was and as the way that they screwed over so many people, you almost long for that because at least you understand the way it works. Now I don't understand the way it works at all.
I know. I just had this conversation. So we're friends with Joseph Arthur. Do you know Joseph Arthur?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so he comes in sometimes and sings for us, and we're like, no one will know it's you know, one of those things. But you know, we're hanging out on the couch at the studio, and we're talking about putting records out now and how hard it is for anyone to even know that you put it out. And he said a great quote. He said, "We didn't know how good we had it when we were getting bleeped."
Yeah,
you know, and I won't say the word, but. And I'm like, dude, you're so right. When we were getting bleeped, we at least knew that the record was out in the trades, you know,
right.
And that people knew that we were getting bleeped. But now you just disappear. It's like you're in the weird shadows.
Yeah, you're just lost in the ether immediately.
You're lost in the ether.
Yeah.
And the other thing also is we have this wonderful press guy, Ken Weinstein, and he represents Spoon and he represents the Pretenders and the Kinks catalog. And he said to me, you know, no one does album reviews. That's number one. So no one knows they don't even know the song's tied to a record, the one they like of yours. The other thing also is most of these press guys, all the papers have these analytics just coming up, how many hits things have. So the days of throwing a newspaper on the porch or an option and not knowing the analytics and letting things slip through where you find out about artists, they don't exist anymore because the analytics will keep you from knowing about the artist because it's not, how can that new artist have a popular write-up? So the analytics keep us from learning about new artists. So there's no record reviews, there's no way of knowing, and you just kind of send it out and hope things work, you know?
It's just an insane industry. And then they announce something like, oh, the Billboard #1 album of this week sold like 3,000 copies. And I'm like, what? Like
What happened to 30,000?
what happened
for one
to
week?
or Pearl Jam would sell 1 million in a week or something in the 90s,
Oh, I know.
and
Yeah.
now they're excited about 3,000 copies being sold, and the whole YouTube thing and how that's going to be converted into something they use for chart position doesn't fully make sense to me. And
Well, that can't work because the analytic there is if you put puppy in your song or cat, cute cat in your song title, you're gonna have more downloads than the one who doesn't have cute cat or cute puppy. And
Well,
so, it's random.
it's also so diluted on there because there's so much pirating of stuff. So in other words, you post your album on YouTube or something officially so people can listen, and then somebody else uploads it, 5, 6 other people or whatever. Eventually they'll get taken down, but they've diluted the impact of what you did formally, officially. Very strange.
It's the Wild West period, and it's the very beginning. And the same way that the Facebooks of the world need to be managed somehow by you can't go on radio and just curse, and you can't do all these things because it's monitored by the government.
Right.
You have FCC, and the internet is just beginning to hit that crossroads where political ads, what have you, it needs to be somehow gauged. It needs to be gauged and curbed or monetized. Somehow it has to be filtered. And we're just part of the beginning of the Wild West, the same way with real estate. Go out and take 10 acres. It's somewhere in Montana.
Yeah.
And there's going to be an Indian tribe. Just settle down, so, and we're just happen to be there. And it's not going to make sense for a while.
Yeah.
And I couldn't tell you when it's going to start making sense. And we just have to, somehow people have to make something in it. There's a huge demand for content. There's a demand on all levels for content. There's no respect though. It's like, no. So everybody wants music in their blog, their vlog, their whatever. And, but how do you pay? How do you reward someone for making this music? And the same for advertising. Everybody needs music in their ad or their whatever. But we're still trying to figure out how that's filtered and how it's respected. Yeah. The sad part is if it's not respected, who's going to want to do it really? I mean, if you still got to keep your full day job, how are you going to have time to make anything of that's worthy in the art world?
Well, this is true. And, it's not even just a small indie band. I interviewed St. Vincent a couple years ago, and she was talking about how hard it is to literally make a living. And she was on a major label and was touring in a very high-profile tour. It just appeared at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame fronting Nirvana. And she's still talking about how she can barely keep her head above water financially. And I considered her to be a major, star or something. So if she's not making any money and the owner of Spotify is a billionaire, where's all this money going? Who?
Well, it's tough. There was a quote from Aerosmith, and they got a check from Spotify, and it was a certain amount of plays, whether it was 1 million plays, same with Lady Gaga, et cetera, Taylor Swift. They got 1 million plays and they got a check for X amount, whatever it was, $5,000, 10, it just wasn't enough.
Right.
And they said, there goes our catalog, I mean, how can Aerosmith's catalog be downgraded value-wise to what Spotify is offering? It seems an impossibility, but yet it's happening.
Yeah.
And for us, ironically, our Spotify, we do decent, but it's never going to pay anyone.
Yeah.
We make our money on Bandcamp, where you can download for $10 or pay what you will, but some people pay 10, some people pay 15, and it actually is just enough money for us to keep making the artwork and keep doing, keep recording. But when you're at the level of some of these artists, you really need more than that. And you need to pay your mortgage. And luckily we have day jobs. So I can't imagine what St. Vincent's going through, because there's no labels anymore. They were just essentially banks, and they would give you money and you would pay it back. And they couldn't sue you, but all the proceeds had to go to them. And so as long as you were selling records, you were fine, and they would keep giving you money. And it was this constant, you know how it worked.
Yeah.
So, but the one great thing is they couldn't sue you personally if you didn't make the money back. So, and then they realized this investment's not worth it. We can't loan money anymore because You know, the CD sales aren't there. And, you
Right.
know, look at where it came from. CD sales, they used to print them for pennies and charge $15. So the markup was so incredible that they made tons of money and artists did really well. So we came from a place where it was so exorbitant to now it's just
Well, and
impossible.
there's one other element to it too, and that was in the 90s, record stores started being phased out of importance to the labels. In other words, they like the big box stores like Best Buy and these kinds of chains, and they cared
Walmart.
more about Walmart. Getting the records in those were far more important. All the advertising money that goes along with the labels, the co-op money, we started going to Best Buy and Walmart and not to your local record store anymore. And gradually they couldn't compete anymore because they're selling the CD for $17 because they have to put $2 on it to make any money. And then Best Buy would sell it for $10.99 because it's a loss leader and they just want to get people in there to buy TVs.
Yeah.
And they
Right.
kind of screwed themselves to a certain degree, you know. And Best Buy would never take a whole catalog of an artist like the Stones. They'll have the biggest, the 5 biggest selling, but they're not going to have
Right.
the entire Stones catalog there or the
And
entire.
then so it starts shrinking, the inventory shrinks.
Right.
So there's like 5 artists.
Yeah, and they all have 1 or 2 albums, the greatest hits, you know, whatever. But I'll say
Right.
this: I love vinyl. I've been a vinyl buyer since I was 10 years old, back in '81 or so. But CDs now, they've been so devalued in the market. You can get them. I mean, any artist you want to, you can find a greatest hits for like $3.99 brand new. It's like
Oh yeah.
kind of nice on that level, but you know how I don't know how anyone is doing it anymore financially, and it was touring up until now. You know,
Yes, that's the other thing. Touring, let's just say for the last 10 years as a number, became everything.
Mhm.
And then labels in their last dinosaur as the chin hits the pavement, gasp for air, said, okay, we'll sign you, but we want a 360 deal, which is merch, touring. We want a cut of everything, which is insane.
Right.
And so then artists proudly stopped doing the 360 deal, and I don't blame them. Like, who wants to give, you know, everything, a chunk, right? And so then touring became everything, and then you saw bands coming back. Tears for Fears and the Specials and Madness are on tour, and why, you know, I got to see the show. That was my high school song, right? And so every day became a new package deal. It was like the early '60s when the Four Seasons were on the bill with the young Rolling Stone. Like, it was a package deal. They'd run up and play 5 songs and run off. And now you can't even play.
Right.
And so, and everyone knows this, and I'm stating the obvious, but so I have all these friends that are session musicians that I have do the jingle work, and they're going, whoa, okay, so records weren't selling, Spotify's a joke, and now I can't even play live, and I'm stuck in my house, just like every other industry, and we're now trying desperately to hire live musicians again, just to keep them afloat, which is our own way of giving back, but you have a real dark spot in the arts community right now, and in terms of musicians and creativity. And the only thing right now is to record, and that's just to keep you sane. I mean, for me, psychologically, I'm doing this to keep my head together, and it's working.
Yeah.
But not being able to play live after the whole industry shifted live, it's like, whoa, that's a brick wall.
Yeah.
And these guys are incredibly talented. I'm telling you, like, I know the guys in the Joe Jackson band and the Christopher Cross band, the live Broadway, and and the Tina Turner show. I mean, all of them stuck, and we're talking A-level musicians. So now's the time when you might have an influx of incredible recordings, more stuff for you to get in the mail. But it is a tough time, and I don't actually like live internet shows.
Yeah.
I don't want to do one. I mean, it's very sad. You finish a song, and then you see all these
there's
faces,
nobody there. Yeah.
and there's no one there, and there's none of that give and take. And it's almost like, well, if you can do it, great. But if you could just wait for live to come back, I think it'd be a better experience. That's just my own.
I am not a big fan of those. I mean, I'm a big Guided by Voices fan. They did one a few weeks ago, live at a club in Ohio, and them performing in front of an empty room just with the cameras. And I just thought it was okay, but I mean, the whole excitement of it was just not there. And how can you be Robert Pollard getting drunk out of your mind and doing his shtick or whatever in front of nobody. You know, it just
It's
was kind of
true.
like, what are you guys doing? Like it just felt kind of dumb. You know, like you can't get that carried away when you're playing in front of nobody. You know,
It takes away what makes a band, especially like that, great.
right.
Like they had they have great records, great songs, great singing, et cetera, et cetera. But the real thrill of that band in particular, and a whole litany of bands like that, is the experience of the show.
Yeah.
And to take that away is tough. It really is. When they really can, they can read the audience like nobody, and they know when the audience needs a pickup or a bring down. Just like Wilco, you know, he knows when he gets soft and quiet the room down.
Exactly.
And to take that away is tough. It really is.
Wilco
was. We never had that. We just play. But
yeah,
to see a band
right.
like that's you know, we just play the songs. But to see a band like that work a room and then not, and to be deprived of it as a witness, you know, as a person in the audience is tough. You know.
It is. Well, Adam, I'm out of my questions here, so I am. Unless you want to add anything here, I have got enough good material here.
Look, you asked why we're doing this. We hire Rob at Shine On. Why are we hiring Rob personally? Well, we keep in touch with the movers and shakers, and he's like, dude, I'm going to hit these people, and this is what you're getting for your money, and it's better than we ever had with the label because now we know what's happening. And B, the record gets to guys like you. And if the record could get to guys like you, it's worth doing all of this. So keep doing what you're doing, and we'll keep doing what we're doing. And as long as we have a line of communication, then that's worth it for us to just keep doing it. So I appreciate what you're doing.
Hey, everybody. Hope you dug that. That was a really special video for me. Glad I got to reconnect with Adam, and I really do hope you go to their Bandcamp page, buy some of their albums. I think he said it was bid what you like, so I'm not exactly sure of the Bandcamp system, but I would hope that you would get familiar with it at this point. What I would really like to hear in the comments are people who said something like, man, I didn't even know this band and now I love them, or I've downloaded 2 albums or what have you. That would be just glorious from my perspective. So thanks a lot to Adam Elk for doing the interview. Stay tuned. I've got a couple more coming down the pike. Take care.